Alaska Airlines has teamed up with Hawaiian Airlines to create new nonstop international flights. Go to alaskaair.com or hawaiianairlines.com, and I'll tell you more details later in the show. Welcome to The Leftovers. I'm Rachel Belle. The Leftovers is audio left on the cutting room floor from last week's Your Last Meal interview. And today, you'll hear never-before-heard cuts from singer-songwriter Kevin Morby, a man with so much to say about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that we dedicated an entire episode to the great American classic.
I'm working on my next record, and I have a song that's called Peanut Butter Jelly, which I'm very excited about. But it's funny because now that I've sort of cultivated this persona of peanut butter jelly guy on Instagram, and I have that song, people are just going to assume what it's about. Of course, you're going to think it's about a sandwich, but it's not about that. A friend of mine a long time ago told me that when you have the windows down in the car and the air conditioning turned all the way up, that's called peanut butter jelly. That is a song that I'm going to have to provide some context for somehow. When people hear it, I'm not referencing the sandwich, I'm referencing this thing that can happen in the car.
If you missed last week's episode, I recommend going back and getting to know Kevin there first. That's where you'll hear that he likes to add scrambled eggs and kimchi to his PB&Js. But if you're all caught up, let's get into The Leftovers with Kevin Morby. I'm going to do a little speed round with you before I let you go.
Love it.
What is your perfect birthday cake or perfect dessert for your birthday?
Perfect birthday cake would be like a white cake with chocolate frosting.
Classic. Best barbecue in Kansas City when people are coming to town that you send people to this place?
Joe's. Joe's or a place called Slaps. Or if you want like the OGs, you go to Arthur Bryant's or Gates.
What would you recommend on the menu? What's your favorite?
Well, Joe's has this sort of like legendary barbecue sandwich called the Z-Man. And it's very, very good, and it lives up to all of its hype. It's the brisket, and it's provolone, and then it's one onion ring, and it's very, very good. And then I would get the ribs at Slaps, and then I'd do the burnt ends at Gates and or Arthur Bryant's.
What is a food that isn't barbecue in Kansas City that should be more well-known than it is?
You know, one of my favorite restaurants, it is technically a barbecue restaurant, but it's just a chicken, like Mexican barbecue restaurant.
Ooh.
And it's called El Pollo Reyes, and it's really, really amazing. And I mean, I'm sure there's a place like this in Austin or something, but I've never been to a restaurant like it. They have three things. They have chicken wings, they have a whole chicken and a half chicken. It's just a wood fired. They're feeding wood into this huge fire all day. If you go in there, you smell like a campfire for like the rest of the week. But they just give you like a half chicken on a plate with tortillas and a lime and their homemade salsa and beans. And it's incredible. So El Pollo Reyes is like a Kansas City specialty that I feel like should be more well known.
Oh, that sounds so good. I was looking at some of the classic foods of Kansas and you expect barbecue, but I was surprised by one thing. And I was wondering if you're familiar with eating chili with cinnamon rolls.
No, but that's great. I love that. I love cinnamon rolls. I'm a big cinnamon roll guy, but that's, I've never heard of that. That's wonderful.
It started in public schools. Apparently, I read that they gave the public schools a bunch of beans and they couldn't get the kids to eat them. And so they started giving them cinnamon rolls with chili so that they would eat it. And now it's a thing. That's
so funny. I'm going to have to try that. I've never heard of that. I love that.
Are you familiar with sour cream raisin pie?
No, okay. No, that sounds insane.
I know. Well, I was like, all of these kind of savory sweet things, maybe this kind of matches with your love of PB&Js and scrambled eggs, but you had no knowledge of it. So yeah, these are some funny local Kansas traditions for you to check out.
Into that. I mean, it does make sense. It does make sense. The sort of Midwestern idea of desserts or what like a salad is or something,
yeah,
is very sweet and savory. So I'll have to look into that. That's amazing.
What is something you weren't allowed to eat as a kid that you got to enjoy as an adult?
I don't know. It's not that I wasn't allowed. It was just that my family, we only ate like 5 things. We ate like hamburgers and like spaghetti with red sauce and beef and like Thanksgiving food. We didn't do too much. Like it was a really like maybe once a year we'd have Chinese food or something like that. So when I got a little bit older, and I started like meeting other kids who showed me Indian food or showed me sushi. That's all stuff that I really didn't experience until like I was an adult. Indian food, Ethiopian food, Japanese food, tons of other stuff.
So is that kind of your food awakening when you started to get into different cuisines?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, I became vegetarian when I was like 15, and that opened up a lot of doors. I know that can close a lot of doors as well, but certainly, stuff like Indian food, and Ethiopian food, like it really opened those doors.
One interview I read with you, you were talking about boredom and how that leads to creativity and like being bored as a kid. And do you still feel that way about living in the Midwest? Not having as many things to do leads to more production?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's something out here that if you tap into the stillness or the quieter lifestyles than you would get on a coast, if you really sort of like hand yourself over to that and let your creativity sort of take shape within that, I think it can be a really, really great place to be. And there's also resources and yeah, just the time and space of being out here really lends itself to creativity. And just in the way that being in New York or LA lends itself to a very social life. When you wake up here and there's only so many people to hang out with, or there's only so many places to go, you kind of have to make your own fun at a certain point. There's this quality to the Midwest. It's like the sunsets can only be so good. The trees can only be so green. Like everything's kind of muted here, both culturally and physically. And there's a beauty to that in and of itself. But also, I have this theory that like everyone who's ever written a handbook on anything, like Bob Dylan's sort of written a handbook on songwriting. He's like Walt Disney created like Disney World, like anyone who's like created like a sort of like rule book on a specific thing, I find are often from the Midwest. And of course, there's so many exceptions to that theory. But to me, a lot of creative people come from the Midwest.
What is a food that after you've been touring and maybe you haven't been eating so well and you can't wait to get home, what is the first thing that you want to make?
If I'm coming from Europe, I want to have Mexican food immediately because that's something that you're really deprived of when you're over there. My girlfriend and I, we have this thing that we call the meal, which is kind of this thing that's very specific to being home and kind of can't get anywhere else, where we make coconut rice and then some sort of protein. So like it'll either be salmon or we'll like grill chicken or something, but let's just say salmon in this case. And then we grill some broccoli. And that is what we've come to know as the meal. Because when you come off tour, you've literally just eaten out like 90 times, all I want to do is just not have to eat out for a while. Just make very basic sort of simple meals that just like get the job done, but are also delicious. That to me signals to like my mind and spirit that like I've made it back home.
And that was Kevin Morby's Leftovers. Kevin's latest record is called This Is a Photograph, and he'll be heading out on tour later this year. The Leftovers and Your Last Meal are both products of Seattle's Cascade PBS. This episode was mixed and mastered by Sarah Bernard with editing and production assistance from Maliha Syed. Original theme music by Prom Queen. I created, host, and co-produced The Leftovers and Your Last Meal. Go to cascadepbs.org to learn more about the podcast, about me, and to watch my TV show. It's called The Nosh. I'm Rachel Belle, and this is The Leftovers. When you're flying, you don't want to deal with a layover. And starting May 12th, Alaska Airlines is offering nonstop flights from Seattle to Tokyo. So you can relax with a straightaway Oregon Old Fashioned or a Lagunitas non-alcoholic sparkling hop water. Choose from one of 800 TV shows and movies, including my TV show, The Nosh, in their in-flight entertainment, and step off the plane 10 hours later, ready to slurp some ramen. Alaska has teamed up with Hawaiian Airlines. Book your dream trip now. Go to alaskaair.com or hawaiianairlines.com.